You're listening to How I Sell, a podcast built for early career sales professionals. You'll hear stories, best practices, and guidance from top sales leaders on what it takes to become a sales superstar. Today's episode is made possible by Ramped Careers. Ramped is on a mission to build the next generation of workforce-ready talent. Hey everyone, today I am so excited to bring Jessica Orozco to our show. Jessica is the VP of Sales at Platform.sh. She's a sales leader, mentor, a connector, and an incredibly well-traveled person. Jessica, I've had the opportunity to do a little bit of research on you, but for those that don't know you, who is Jessica Orozco?
I grew up in Inglewood, California. I'm one of four children, daughters, all women in my family. I'm the second oldest, and I grew up as a solid B student. Never really shined in any particular area. I always tried my best, and it really didn't lead me down any particular obvious path in my life. So I worked my way through college, working full-time in HR and payroll. And when I finally graduated and got my degree, I got let go. I was laid off. And so I really needed to figure out my life and what I wanted to do with it from a career perspective. And I worked with, the good thing about getting laid off is that they got me a career coach, and she helped me kind of identify my strengths and be able to kind of put that into my resume and the types of the types of positions that I wanted to apply for. And so going through that process, I realized that a lot of my strengths, my natural abilities, aligned perfectly with a sales career. So I started really trying to work my network and apply to any sort of junior sales positions that were out there. At the time I was living in DC, and so I was interviewing with government contractors. I interviewed with a wine distributor company, and then I ultimately interviewed for a data center provider in Ashburn, Virginia. And that was my first take into the sales role. I started kind of more of an inside seller and worked my way from there. And I now, 12 years later, the VP of sales for Platform. So it's been a wild ride, but it's just really loved every minute of it.
It sounds like it, and I picked up on a couple of things that you mentioned, and I do want to kind of dive in on this because we need to give credit where credit is due. You graduated with an English degree, and you worked full time the entire time you were in school. How did you balance that? I mean, it has to be a lot of work. How did you find the hours of the day?
Yeah, well, it was really hard. I remember most of that time really just trying to do my homework during my lunch hour at work, taking classes at night and working long into the middle of the night, just trying to get my assignments done. So it was a lot of drive and diligence and just a lot of determination to get that accomplished. For me, my driver was always trying to make my mom proud. So I was the first one to graduate college, and so I knew how much that meant to her. So that's what kept me motivated through the whole thing.
It's so inspiring to hear these stories because, on the one hand, someone like me, I had to work, but it wasn't full time. College was fun for me, and I hope that you had a little bit of fun. But from the sounds of it, it looks like it was just a lot of work. But hey, listen, it's made you who you are today. But at no point during, I guess, your time in college or even shortly thereafter, did you feel like sales would be a fit or even know what it meant? What triggered this whole sales event was actually a not so fun exercise of having to, be laid off at your very first job after you had to bust your tail off working full time. How did you feel? I mean, what was your immediate reaction, right? If I were you and I worked so hard and I got the job, I would hate the world. What was going on in your head? I mean, because you took a positive spin. I mean, you worked with a career coach, figured things out. What was your mindset?
Yeah, I always think about this quote of never let a good crisis pass you by, right? And so I'm one that I always look at the positive, or at least I try to. I try to look at the positive things of everything, right? There's always something to learn and to get out of an event. And so for me, when that happened, obviously I was devastated and it was really hard. But I quickly got over it, and I started putting a plan in place of how am I going to get myself out of this, because I don't have a fallback plan, right? It is me. I need to pay my bills, so I need to figure this out. But I wanted to get out of the monotony that I was in, which is a paycheck by paycheck kind of lifestyle. I really wanted to be able to be successful and make lots of money and have an actual career. And so as I was kind of going through this journey of finding myself and what I wanted to do with my life, it was really good to again have somebody guide me through that process of what are my strengths, what am I really good at, and what do I like to do, and then how does that translate to a career. So she was really a big part of helping me through that and realizing what I wanted to do ultimately.
That's incredible. But even with that, you still had to hustle, for the lack of a better word, to find your first sales gig. And when you did manage to find that, right? Was there a skill gap nonetheless? Were there still things that you had to learn? And what did you do your first 6 months, right? Because it's so critical when you just start a new job. I'm sure you felt this pressure to wanting to succeed. From the little that I know you, I can already feel just your drive through the computer. So tell me how your first 6 months were.
Yeah, so I was really lucky in that the person that decided to give me a chance without any experience whatsoever was a great mentor to me. He taught me everything that I needed to know about what I was selling, and he was really big on relationships. That was basically his big thing. Everybody loved him, and he had a really great network. And so he really took me under his wing and kind of showed me the ropes. But then quickly after gave me a phone book and said, go call people. So, I've done that, right? Where you try to call 100 people a day and leave a lot of voicemails. And back in my day, we didn't have all these cool tools. It literally was just a list of phone numbers and you would try to call people. So he made me a little script that I basically used as I left voicemails or talked to people. And I got myself really uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
I put myself in really uncomfortable situations. I mean, though that job is not easy. So all the SDRs out there, I totally get it, right? It's not easy. It's not easy having first conversations with somebody that is not expecting your call, especially when you don't really know what you're doing. But it's the only way to learn. So, and I learned best by doing. So for me, it was just every conversation that went poorly, I reflected back and I thought, how could have that been better, And then I just try to put that back into my work and really, again, I always take a positive spin. So, one no is the one closer to yes. So, at some point it's going to happen. And so I just kept running the numbers and just kept at it. So really the first couple of months was just trying to learn as much as I could from my mentor. And then the rest is learning from my process and just trying to get better at my craft.
Yeah, I want to pause for a second, and I think this is a good moment for whoever is listening to this to reflect on how your first few years in sales could be, because I think from whatever you've shared, it seems like a lot of work, and it's more no's than yeses, and it's not like you took a magic pill or you got around the process of putting in the hours. You had to make hundreds of cold calls, and while you empathize with everyone that's doing it today, it seems like it's the only way people learn. So, thank you for sharing that. And safe to assume that you crushed those sales roles. But in the back of your mind, did you have other plans? Did you want to kind of, move up the ranks faster? How did that kind of come about? Because you have risen up the ranks relatively quickly, all things equal. How did you manage to pull that off?
Yeah, I'm the type of person, I'm a type A personality, if you haven't noticed. I always have a plan, right? I'm constantly thinking about, not a year from now, not 2 years from now, 5 years from now. Who do I want to be? What do I want to do in this world? And even from back then, I kept thinking about that. So yeah, I have my first step into this sales career, but what am I going to make of it? Where do I want to be in 5 or 10 years? And so I was always kind of driven by that, and just really thinking about that next step and how do I get there, right? So I started actually looking at job descriptions for that next role. So I wanted to be a director was kind of my next step. It's like, how do I get to a director level? What do I think, what do I need to do? What do those people do, right? So it's a lot of learning from people that have already done it and figuring out how they did it, and then just trying to replicate that, and trying to learn those skills and figure out my gaps, and then trying to fill those gaps, while I was going through this journey.
And then you would do that while you were working on your current role. It's just something that you develop as a set of skills while you're doing it. And so my other question was, what was the transition like? But it looks like in your case, it wasn't like you were doing X and then you got a promotion. The next day, you're a completely new person having to do Y. It almost looks like you ramped or grew into that role. Is that a good way of thinking about it?
Yeah, I always, in every team I was on, I just always naturally became kind of team lead. People came to me for answers and I used to help them on their deals. And it was just kind of that natural next step once I got to it. So, I think that there was, for me, I kept looking at my boss and figuring out what aspects about them I really liked that I would take into my role when I became the manager or the director. And then I looked at their boss and figured that out as well, right? So I kind of took nuggets from each one of these people as I continued down this path of my career, and really trying to take the best out of everybody that I came across. And then I also love to read, and so I, through the articles and the podcasts and all the rest, just trying to just gather all those things and make it sort of my own.
Lots of work there, lots of effort. But it looks like in addition to reading, you also love traveling. I actually spent a bit of time this afternoon, more time than I should, scrolling through all of your photos. But I mean, that's such an incredible thing to do. So you took a year to go travel and visit what six continents, 36 countries, starting in Ireland, ending in Peru. I mean, what?
Yeah.
How did that happen? You were crushing sales, and then you woke up and you said, "This is it. This is my time to shine. I'm going to take a year and travel, take pictures, and document it." Tell us a little more about it.
Yeah. So, I again, I was really lucky, and just I think really the right place at the right time with the right skill set. And I was able to make a lot of money in a very short amount of time. And being, almost 30 at the time, I felt like, well, I guess the next thing I have to do is buy a house just like everybody else does, right?
Hmm.
But then I really started thinking about the things I want to accomplish. I made myself goals of my life, the things I want to do before I die. And a lot of it had to do with traveling. And so I kind of took a step back and thought about how, you know, the money that I have in the bank didn't necessarily have to translate into, going down the same path everybody else goes down and buying the
Hmm.
house and getting married and doing the whole thing. And there's another way, and I have the choice of doing whatever I want with my life and that money. And so we decided, with my husband and I, at the time we were just dating, that we're just going to take this money and we're going to accomplish all these things that we had kind of set for ourselves in our life. So that's kind of what set it in motion. We made the decision in April, and by July we were on a plane. So yeah.
That's incredible. And listen, once in a lifetime experience, and I hope that you'll have plenty of opportunities to do more of that. But I can only imagine that a trip like that kind of changes you a little bit as a person, right? I mean, you work so hard. I'm assuming that this was the only time that you actually truly got to take some time off, and had some financial comfort, to be able to do it. You spend a whole year. Did that change you a little bit when you came back? Did you have a Zen, I don't know, eat, pray, love woman? I don't know what to call it, but when you came back, were you the same Jessica, or did you gain a new perspective on life? And if so, what was it?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think that the two big things that I realized while traveling is that, one, we're all the same, right? no matter where we're from or what we believe, we all want the same thing. We all want to be happy, and we all want to see the best for our children, or for our family members. And that's universal. That's for everyone, you know? So I think it really helped me realize just humans in general. And it really helped me have more empathy for people, and just be more open to, what the different personalities and the different aspects that people bring. And so I think that really kind of helped open my eyes a bit more as to how people are driven, because, like I said, ultimately we're all kind of all driven by the same things. So it really helped me from that perspective. And sales is all about selling to people, right? They're human beings.
Yeah.
So having that insight as to just humans in general, regardless of where they're from, really helped kind of give me that newfound perspective that I didn't have before.
And then that's incredible, right? In a period of 10 years, you went from fresh out of college, laid off, had to reinvent yourself, to, hey, I'm going to take a year off and travel the world. And you come back, and I'm presuming that you have, a good job waiting for you. Along those same lines, once you hit a certain, position professionally, you are in a position of influence in multiple ways, right? One is in hiring, nurturing, and growing a team. What's your perspective? And I'm sure you've interviewed a lot of early career sales professionals. I'm sure you've seen them grow. I'm sure you've seen some of them fail. What are some attributes that you think are critical for anyone that wants to have a lasting career in sales, not the 1-2 years and get burnt out, but someone that actually wants to build a career in sales? What are 3 attributes that you think they should have?
Yeah, I think the first attribute that they should have is that they need to be resilient, right? Because sales is not easy, and it's not for everyone. You're going to get a lot more no's than you'll get yeses. And you're going to be challenged, and you're going to be, pushed outside of your comfort zone all of the time. And so if you're not resilient, it's probably not the career for you. The second thing is you have to be very driven. For me, I always look for people that could be somewhat self-sufficient, right? I could give them the tools that they need, that will set them up for success, but then the rest of it is up to them. And if they're not self-starters, and if they're not driven to do it, then it's never going to work. Because I can't babysit people, and that's not what I hire them to do, right? I hire them to come and do great things. And then I think the third thing is just being a good person, right? Really caring about people, and really trying your best at helping them through their problems to find solutions. And I always find that the best salespeople ultimately believe that what they're doing is helping people.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And some of these attributes, I think, folks may naturally be good at it. Some of them may have to be developed. What do you think is the right mix? Do you think that, and this is, there's no right or wrong answer here. Do you think that folks that are incredibly successful are the ones that just tend to have maybe a bit more of a natural predisposition? Or do you think that this is a learned skill? You can learn this?
Yeah, I think there's some things that can be learned, and then some things that are a little bit harder, like having resiliency and being driven.
Yeah.
I think are two things that you just have to have natural abilities to do. It's a really hard thing to teach someone to want to be driven, or to want to be resilient, or to be resilient rather. I think it happens also with maturity. I think I took no's a lot harder earlier on in my career. But then it just kind of becomes just your everyday, and so you really, it doesn't bother you as much.
Yeah.
So maybe some of that can be learned, but I think overall is, I think there's this kind of natural predisposition that really help to accelerate your success. Like, you can be a mediocre seller and try to learn these skills, but I think that the people with those 3 skill sets, just out the gate, being natural at it, are the ones that end up being at the top of their game. So
yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'll agree with you on that one. Having done this for a little bit, and having seen success and some challenges as well, Have you developed your own philosophy on sales? Do you have, something that you subscribe to and you firmly believe in when it comes to how to sell?
Yeah, I mean, I believe in having a strategy, right? And I think that the strategy comes with doing your research ahead of time. So really trying to understand the business overall, who are the key leaders? What are their core values as a company? What are their initiatives? I mean, luckily for us, we have the internet and there's a lot of information out there, right? See what they're putting out in the news. What do they care about?
Mm-hmm.
And then try to figure out a way to align those things to what you're trying to sell. And then look at the individual as an individual. How long have they been with the company? Where were they before? What was their career trajectory? Because that'll give you a lot of information going into that first conversation or even into that cold call, right? Because then you have things to actually talk about that they care about. And then I think it just goes into a process by which you have to figure out who your champion is, right? Who's going to be the one to gain the most out of this solution that you're providing, and then using that as a resource to partner with that person to really understand the intricacies of their business, right? Who are all the stakeholders that are going to make this decision?
Mm-hmm.
Who has a stake in the game, right? And who's going to be ultimately making this decision? Who's going to pay for it? What do they care about? So you have to map all of those things out, and then ultimately, you get to the win. But then it doesn't end there. It continues that relationship, and you have to nurture that relationship because people change positions all the time. They go other places, and they're going to remember you if you really did help them.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to remember you and come back.
That's so elegantly put. I love the framework, and I like that you don't treat this as a transactional process even after you do sell and get a signature or get money in the door. Understanding that relationships like these are often very long in tenure, and people, especially these days, hold multiple jobs. I can't agree with you more. This is amazing. I think you've shared lots of nuggets of information, and thank you for also sharing your personal story. I think oftentimes things like that get lost, and people just have this misconceived notion of what it takes to succeed in this day and age. I'll ask you my last question, my favorite question, where you and I do a little bit of time travel. Let's say we go back in time, and you see a version of Jessica that is 10 years ago, and just sitting there in a corner, maybe reading a book, or maybe working full-time, or maybe doing both like you did, and you had to share one piece of advice, just one piece of advice, what would that be?
I think for me would be more focused on them than you are of you and your product, right? So get to know them and their business, and that's where you'll be successful.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that. This has been such a pleasure having you. I've enjoyed, spending time with you today, and hope we can stay in touch. And once again, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. This is great. Thanks
Awesome.
so much.